once again. Welcome to the Appleton REIA podcast. My name is Dan Alborn, and we are here today with Jacci Conkle.
What's up?
We're rock on to the podcast, Jacci. We're dropping some knowledge bombs, and today, guys, this is by far, I think, one of the bigger ones we've had, because what we're going to talk about today is a specific piece of legislation that really could revolutionize the whole real estate market as we know, Jacci, and it's closer than we want to believe.
Yeah, for sure.
And what we're talking about, and this may be completely new to you because it was just new to us in the last month or so, is something about the idea of rent control.
What now?
Rent control, right? So if you've never heard of this before, if you're a landlord, listen up. You want to tune into this because this is something that is sweeping the nation pretty quickly. And let me give you a little history. So I don't know how long ago this happened, but over in Germany, because Europe tends to lead the way in these type of things, they have nationalized rent. So the government in Germany can actually tell you, as a landlord, what you can rent that property for.
And how much you can increase it for.
Exactly. I mean, it's very, very conducive to the government of them being in the middle of controlling what's going on with that property. To me, it doesn't sound very American, does it? Well, that is happening here in the U.S., and there's precedent. It always starts with precedent, and it started in Oregon.
Yep.
We were talking with some investors recently that they had a bill passed that they were able to kind of dovetail to not be maybe as bad as it could have been.
Oh, boy.
But they actually have in Oregon how much they can increase per year. And it's just that first little hand in the cookie jar of them going after this. And then not even that far from us, below us in the state of Illinois, in the last, I think, 12 to 18 months, they've had just a handful of bills that they've tried passing in regards to rent control. But due to local investors and the local REIAs, they lobbied to block that, so it is not passed. So, again, why is this even all important? Why are we even taking a podcast to talk about this, Jacci?
Oh, my goodness. Because if you have a government who's controlling your rents, your values of your property change. Your cash flow changes. Your everything changes. The supply and demand. I mean, what happened in Oregon is they put in the rent control. Now, I think they were going for a 3% increase per year as the maximum you could do. I mean, come on. But because of the local real estate groups and the lobbyists that they put in place, they were actually able to get it up to 7. You know, I guess that's not a total killer. You know, a lot of landlords won't raise more than 10% per year anyways because they want to keep the tenants they have and stuff like that. But it could have been so much worse.
Well, think about this, Jacci. I mean, you're a guy. You get a great deal on a property that's currently rented, and it's under-rented,
Way
right?
under-rented.
Way under-rented by like hundreds of dollars.
What are you going to do?
Let's say it's a $450, two-bedroom, and you can bring it up to $750 by doing some great remodeling, make it look new, because that's what you do. Well, the government would come in and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Investor.
Nope.
You can't do that. You can only go 3%. I mean, that's a deal killer, right? You can't do that deal where normally today you could. Now, are you being a savage and really attacking? No, you're making a higher quality product.
Sure.
And you're accommodating a person who needs that type of product.
Well, and here's the thing. What if you didn't do any renovation, but it's just grossly under-rented because they are renting to the same person for 20 years?
Correct. That
and
happens
it was a bad
all the time,
landlord
too.
who didn't raise their rents.
For sure.
I mean, this stuff happens all over the place. So now that house, that rental property, just isn't worth what it could be worth. And generally what happens is a very savvy buyer comes in and buys it, sees that it's under rented, pays the price, does what they need to do. They raise the rents, and now it's cash flowing like a cow because they got a decent deal, but the seller got to sell it for what they wanted to. If they have to look at it and say, I can only raise it by 3%, 7%, heck, even 10%, whatever, it doesn't matter. If there's a cap on it, a cap can harm you.
Absolutely.
So now the value of that property is only worth what that pro forma rent says it's worth, and you can't raise that pro forma by more than X percentage because a government who doesn't understand our business wants to have a hand, as you said, in the cookie jar.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not already seeing us kind of pulling back the sheets a little bit here and seeing how this can really, I mean, this is just one step into invading into the real estate investing world. You know, it could start in regards to rentals, but what if it comes in to now start doing rehabs? Well, you can't necessarily sell a home like that, and there's some of that in place already with some things,
depending on the lending.
You're absolutely right. So there's some of that. that, but what if that becomes more robust, right?
Yep.
So it's important that you know this, and that just comes back to the value of the podcast, obviously we're sharing that, but this is stuff we talk about at the clubs and the value of the REIA, Jackie, right?
Yeah, and having that access to the information, but also reaching out to your legislators and knowing that when you support clubs like your local REIAs, your national REIAs, and even like local national apartment associations, things like that, there are lobbyists that are at the state level on your behalf that by being part of these groups, you're supporting paying for those lobbyists that can do what we can't do sometimes.
Absolutely.
But of course we can write letters and we can vote for the right people and we can follow these bills and we can, sound the alarm and tell everybody to call their local legislators, and talk about it and tell them how you feel about it. Write them a letter, send them a fax, send an email, make a phone call. I mean, that stuff definitely matters. But the thing is we even had it in our local market, not too far from us in Oshkosh, not too long ago, they passed rules with being able to just come in and inspect your properties and, give you fines and do all this thing. You even had to pay for the inspection. Those types of things and this type of a thing, a rent control, what it happens is it kind of upsets the marketplace. And all of a sudden you have a bunch of people that are like, well, I don't want any part of that, so I'm going to sell my property.
You're right.
Now you have a whole bunch of properties for sale, but there's not very many buyers.
Yeah.
So what it does is it brings all your property values down. Everything that you've worked for and built on all these years is now suddenly worth what you paid for it or less, which is not really a fun thing to deal with. So I think the hardest part, Dan, right now in the areas with rent control where they weren't expecting it, right? And they didn't get their rents in shape before it hit. Right. They're competing with new construction or new properties coming into, maybe they were a single family before and now they're rentals. They get to set their rent because they're just starting. Right.
And if you know anything about, legislation and bills, and maybe you don't, I'll educate you, is that when they pass these bills, no one really knows everything that's in these things. And we had an issue where we were just talking with some other investors in Chicago where they slipped something in.
Yep.
At the very last second that no one knew about, that now became law. And it dealt with like tenant screening and things of that nature. So that's the type of stuff that you have to be aware of. And like Jackie said, we're all busy. We're running our own businesses, right? It's sometimes hard to keep our pulse on that, but that's the value of these partnerships with the local clubs and more importantly with the Appleton REIA. It's part of the national REIA, guys. So what's great about it is you have this huge entity that is looking out for our best interest on the local level, and they give us this information, they educate us, where we can come back to you as the local investor and say, listen, Joe Q investor, here's something that's going to be coming to our area. So it's not like out of the blue, before you know it, there's legislation on the table and it passes. We can hopefully be proactive, so when we know it's going into subcommittee and they're proposing this, because they have to propose it first, we can get the right people in those people's ear to kind of say, well, hey, before you really go through this, to go down this rabbit hole, what are the ramifications? And having dialogue, not arguing with people, but sitting down and having conversations with them.
Yeah, helping them to understand what we actually do.
Right.
And why this is a bad idea. Because you can't just say, well, that's a bad idea.
Right.
You have to tell them why. You have to explain your business, because at the end of the day, they're just all, politicians. They don't necessarily know our business. Right. One of the things that I love down in Illinois, Jane Garvey, who runs the CCIA, the Chicago Creative Investors Association, which is a REIA in their area, and they are a chapter of the National REIA, she actually took the time to sit down and draft a document that she shared with them, 91 ways to help the community without, or to solve housing issues without rent control. Right. So rent control could be number 92. She said, here's 91 other ways that you can help solve the housing issue besides rent control. Because part of the issue right now is we're just running out of low-income housing. Because everything's on the upswing, and the lower side of things are getting kind of lost in the mix. But there's, according to Jane, at least 91 other ways to solve this problem other than destroying all these investors' businesses and creating undue depreciation of property. Right. So
And I mean, the big thing with this is that it's almost knee jerk the way I see it. Is instead of really vetting out the best solution, the easy answer is, well, let's just control rents, right? Let's make sure
let's be big government.
Yeah, let's be big government, and until we can actually sit down and talk with our local legislators, or on a state level, or even on a national level if necessary, and helping them to Jackie's point, educate them on how this really upsets the apple cart, because we are a huge component to the economy. And by doing this, it's going to have a lot of adverse actions. How about we work together to a better solution versus what you deem, based on your knowledge of real estate, as the best solution? Because they aren't real estate investors. They don't get it. They just assume it sounds good. And you know what the other thing is? It sounds great in the eyes of the average consumer.
Sure does.
Well, we're going to control
my rent. Up?
Exactly.
Awesome.
But the end of the day, it's not as good as it seems once you start pulling back the details.
Yeah, when your landlord loses his property because he can no longer afford to keep it, and now you don't have a home anyway because that house just went down the tubes.
Absolutely.
It's just not, it's not a solution.
And the landlord's not going to have money to reinvest into their property to make it nice, which ultimately, like Jackie talked about, is bringing down property values, and then it's just all the other things that come with low-income housing, and sometimes those areas that become more hotbeds for issues in a local community, and specifically where we live in Northeast Wisconsin, we're a pretty safe area. It's just going to foster that kind of stuff that we don't deal with on too much of a high level where we live in our area. So as a local investor listening to this, I think it has huge impacts for us. But at the end of the day, I mean, the value of the club, too, is that when we have these type of situations and we get a little bit of foreknowledge of it, we're not afraid, too, as a local club to, let's have a meeting. Let's go sit down with, our local assemblyman or our local alderman and say, listen, what about this? Have you heard about this? And it's just having that dialogue when it comes down to, right, Jackie?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm absolutely not opposed to even inviting them to come and speak to the group, and we can all share some insight. And that's probably something that will happen next year, just to make sure that these things don't start to creep in.
Right.
I think, what do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. True. True.
So just creating, again, we're all about creating relationships. We create relationships with each other, other investors, as well as our vendor members, and of course with our legislators and politicians in the area, because if they can hear more from us and what matters to us and why it matters, and why solving this one little problem with this rent control type of a solution creates a dozen or two dozen more problems that are actually more severe, and how that does not help the community at all. But they don't see that, and so just stay on the cusp of things wherever you are in the country listening to us right now. Watch your bills. Do a little bill tracking, see what's coming out, look at read the bill, see what's in there, talk to your local and statewide, politicians, and just make sure that you're heard and that they know. Making a phone call definitely does matter. That's how they operate. If they don't hear from anyone, they just assume everything's fine. Correct. Although they should just assume nobody is heard.
Right.
But they just assume all is well if they don't hear anything from their constituents.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to, I mean, if you're hearing this now and your blood's boiling a little bit, because I know some people that they hear this kind of stuff and it just gets them heated. And I'll be honest, I was like, whoa, this is pretty big stuff when we finally heard it. The value is networking, building that relationship with other like-minded people. That's why having the local REIA is essential. Coming down, if you're in Appleton, obviously come check us out at AppletonREIA.com to find out more information and meetings and stuff like that. But if it's a national thing and you're out of market, go search online, find that local club, network with them, and make sure your voice is heard, because more than likely, if you're in the same line of business, your concerns are probably similar. Right. And then jointly you can solve this problem versus, you're right, if you're all by yourself going to, who's going to care? But if you have a group of people that can speak on behalf of a business structure, it pulls your weight a little bit more. And like I said, specifically with the National REIA, you have those larger lobbyists and things like that can also work on our behalfs as well. So absolutely.
It's funny because I was just reading in a forum that I participate in the other day, and there was a girl on there, not from here, and she said somebody was trying to give her some advice on getting her business off the ground and investing, and they're like, you should definitely, look for your local REIA and join it. And she's like, oh, I did. I go sometimes depending on the topic. And that, I got to just say right here, because talking about pet peeves. Yeah. That right there just resonated with me as that girl is not going to have success.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the topic is. I don't even care if you don't look at the topic. The topic's either going to be something that you're really interested in or it's not. But if you go there with the intention to pull out at least one golden nugget,
Absolutely.
no matter what the topic is, you're going to get it. Like some of you might be listening to this right now and you don't have rental properties and you're like, well, that was a waste of my podcasting time. It's not, because you might end up with one by accident. If you're renovating and selling properties, you might not sell one time or get caught in a market that changes.
Yes.
Or maybe at some point you decide, I would like to take participation in that. And even if you don't, rent control can affect investment property prices, period, all across the board. And it changes the comps in your market. It just matters. So the thing I was going to say about her is, it doesn't matter what the topic is. You don't just go to a group like a REIA, a Real Estate Investors Association, just for the topic of the night, the keynote speaker.
Right.
If you don't go early and stay late, you're missing the meat. You want to do the networking. You want to hear the market update if there is one. You want to learn about any legislative things that you need to get active on like this. Going to the REIA is more than just the keynote of the night, and so I just wanted to put that plug.
No, I agree with you. The value is in the people you meet with and the relationships that you make. I mean, there's so much business that's done, and if you're a new investor, this was anything in life.
Elbows.
If you want to be successful, you want to find like the 5 people that are the most successful people that doing what you do, and surround yourself around them, right? And get to know them, because by just osmosis and assimilation, you're going to then inherit some of those traits, qualities. You're going to pick up on things, and you're just going to become more knowledgeable. So I
think it increases your confidence too.
Oh, for
just
sure.
being around other people, like literally, I would see people that I'm like, well, she's dumber than me, and she can do it. And I know everybody thinks that when they see me in front of the room. They're like, well, dang, if Jackie can do it, I'm going to have no problem.
It's true, guys. It helps you with that confidence. And I can speak to this, and I know most of the REIAs that we associate with and with the national, people that are share and give. And I think that's what really separates the Appleton REIA just from what we do, is that we are there to help everyone out. We serve. We give everything while we're there. We stay there till basically they almost kick us out. We have a good time. We laugh. We joke. But we're also there to help other people, and I think that's the immense value you have. And that's the true value. Yes, you get nuggets with the speakers and the topics that are there, but to Jackie's point, you're coming for the people and hanging out and rubbing elbows. And who knows, you might even score a deal, because there's a lot of that happens after the meeting.
Absolutely. And wherever you are in the country listening to us right now, I mean, if you're not part of a local REIA, go online and find one. You can go to nationalrea.com or .org.
.org,
Snap.
I think it is.
I think it's .org.
I think it's .org, yeah.
Nationalrea.org, and you can look up all the clubs in your state. If there isn't one close to you, you can just Google for one, and maybe you'll find one that's not a member, not a chapter of the National REIA, but still a local REIA that you can jump into and start meeting other investors and get some topics.
Absolutely. Or obviously, if you are local here and you know us personally, go to AppletonREIA.com. If you've never been to a meeting, the first one's free, guys. So you can definitely go there, get your guest pass, and then I think once you come there, you're going to see immense value that you're going to want to become a member, because there's so many benefits and savings and discounts you get by just being a member of the local REIA, that if you're in this business, it'd be silly not to do it.
Yeah.
So that pretty much does it for us as of right now on the Appleton REIA podcast. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. It educates you on some upcoming news. Rent control is a big thing. Check with your local REIA to kind of know how it could affect your area as well. So until we talk next time, Jackie, you have yourself a good one.
You too, Dan.
I'm Dan Albarn. You've been listening to the Appleton REIA podcast. See ya.
Bye.